Everything that you experience, success, failure, love, money, opportunities, dead ends, all of it follows specific rules, not opinions, not theories, rules. The problem is nobody taught you what they are, so you've been playing the game without knowing the rules and wondering why you keep losing. And in this video, I'm going to go over the 5 hidden laws that control your entire reality. And once you understand them, reality stops being chaotic and starts being predictable. And by the end of this video, all 5 of these different laws here are going to be outlined specifically so you'll know exactly what they are and how you can use them to change your life. So what does it mean to decode reality? So decoding reality is really about seeing the system, okay? Let's look at over here. Seeing the system, okay, behind the experience, okay? This is what decoding the reality means. Move this here. Decoding, okay? So decoding is seeing the system behind your experience. And before we get into the 5 laws specifically, I want to set the frame. Most people experience life like they're watching a movie in a language that they don't understand. Things happen, they react. More things happen, they react again. It feels random, chaotic. It feels like life is happening to them. And decoding reality really means understanding what that language is. Instead of sitting there watching a movie where you don't really understand the language, there's no subtitles. When you're decoding reality, you get to actually decode that language so that you can start to understand it and use it to your benefit. It means you stop reacting to what's going on the surface and you start reading the system underneath. Think about it this way. It's like finally seeing the code behind the simulation. The events don't change, but your ability to read them, interpret them, and respond to them completely changes. This is what these 5 laws give you. They're the operating language of reality. And let me outline the chain, because every experience that you have runs through this process. So starting here, you have an input, then you have an interpretation, okay? You're interpreting that particular piece of data, and then this goes into your identity, and it shapes your identity in terms of how you have interpreted that particular event, that data input. And then you take a specific action, and then you get feedback, okay? This is the entire process, okay, that you go through when you are experiencing reality, right? Every single experience that you go through goes through this entire sequence. And the 5 laws that I'm about to teach you, each one of them governs a link in this chain. So let's get into it. So law number 1, the law of identity. This is the foundation for everything. This is the most important, and this is the main foundational pillar, and it's the foundation that everything else is built upon. So your identity, who you believe you are at the core, and it's not just your self-concept. It's a filter. It determines what you notice, what you perceive, what you ignore, what you believe is possible, and what you don't even consider. Think of identity as the operating system, and reality is your interface. And the interface only shows you what the operating system is programmed to display. Let me give you an example. So 2 people walk into a networking event, right? Same situation, same opportunities, same event. Essentially, all of the variables are the same. Now, person A's identity says that I'm not really a networking person. I'm a little bit awkward in these situations, and people like me don't belong in rooms like this. So based off all of that, what is their filter showing them? It's showing them different groups of people, different cliques that are already gathered together, that are talking, that they don't feel like they belong and that they could integrate and be part of those groups because they've already established themselves and have chosen their identity to be somebody who is not a networking person. They see people who are more successful, more outgoing, more confident, more connected. And so they stand in the corner and they don't talk to anybody and they're by themselves because they're reaffirming, right, their story that they have told themselves about who they are at the identity level. And then they leave the event early, and then they're telling themselves in the back of their mind, see, I'm not a networking person, right? So it's this constant reaffirming to themselves about how they think about themselves, how they see themselves. And so it ultimately all becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that they have decided to attach and to connect to their identity. So then all of that is experienced in the external world. Now, let's contrast that with person B. Person B understands that they are somebody who is a networking type of person. They believe that they're someone who creates valuable connections, is a great resource, is somebody who is competent, who is confident, and who is open to creating new relationships. They're telling themselves, hey, I belong in this type of environment. I belong in this type of room. All of those different cliques, this group of people, I belong in those types of groups. And then they make themselves available to go and start conversations. It's the same exact room, but their filter is completely different. So then they experience a different external reality. And so they see opportunities in that particular networking event because they see themselves as someone who belongs there, who is actually a value creator, and who's somebody that is a valuable asset to somebody in terms of a potential partnership, relationship. So the filter, the lens is completely different than from the first person because they have decided at the identity level that they are somebody who is great at networking and who has valuable contributions and connections to offer to others. And so they start mingling, they start connecting with people, and then they leave that meeting with 3 different new connections for potential business deals, right? So think about that. That first person, they left early, they reaffirmed themselves that they're not good at networking and that that's not the type of person they are, while the other person left the actual networking event with 3 new opportunities, right? Completely different lens, same exact situation, same environment, but it's completely different. So, because here's the thing, the identity didn't just change how they felt in the room. It changed what they literally saw, right? People can experience the same exact event, no matter what it may be, no matter what happened, right? And both of them can have completely different views because they are only able to see what they allow themselves to see through their identity, through the filters. The identity filters the reality before you're able to objectively assume it, experience it, right? Before you're able to objectively view it for what it actually really is, you're always seeing it from the lens of your identity. And that's what you see first, right? And then you have to step outside of yourself from the third person and look at it objectively, but you're always going to see what you believe in terms of your identity, because your identity doesn't just influence your behavior, it influences your perception. You cannot see opportunities that your identity says that don't exist for you. So remember, you don't see reality, you see what your identity allows you to see. So that's the law of identity, and every other law runs through it. Law number 2, this is the law of interpretation, okay? How you interpret everything that happens to you in your reality, in your experience, right? Circumstances, events, situations, all of that. And this is how you process everything that happens to you. And let me give you an example. So you have 3 different siblings that all grew up together in the same household, same parents, same environments, same childhood. The father was emotionally unavailable. He worked all the time, never said I love you, never showed up to any of their games. All 3 kids experienced the same father. Sibling 1 interprets it as, I wasn't worth his time. I'm not lovable. They spent their entire adult life seeking validation from others because of the lack of love and validation that the father did not provide them. So they're seeking validation from their partners, from their bosses, from their friends, trying to fill a hole that that interpretation created. Now, sibling 2, they interpret that as love isn't safe. People that you depend on will disappoint you. They become fiercely independent, but emotionally unavailable. And they push away anybody that gets too close because their interpretation says closeness equals pain. Now, sibling 3, they have the most empowering interpretation. You know what? My dad didn't know how to express his love. That was his limitation. That was something that he learned from his parents. You know, maybe his parents didn't show him love either. And he was just going off of inherited programming, right? An inherited operating system. So he doesn't use it as an interpretation of he's not worthy. It's more of, hey, you know what? My dad didn't really know. He never grew up that way in terms of getting love and being affectionate. So that's on him. And you know what? I appreciate and I'm grateful for the role that he played, but that has nothing to do with me. And you know what? I'm going to learn emotional intelligence so that my kids never experience this. And they become an intentional, present parent and they break the cycle, right? It's no longer one of those things where their programming is inherited from the parents in terms of all the negativity, right? Taking it in terms of my dad doesn't love me, or my dad didn't care for me. My dad didn't tell me that he loved me. All of these different things that happened, but they understand that it was all programming that the father experienced and inherited, which has nothing to do with them. And so they break the cycle. Same father, same childhood, same events, and 3 completely different lives. Not because of what happened, but because of the meaning that each one of them assigned to the events, to the experience, to what happened. Here's the thing, because the event itself was neutral. It was a father who worked too much and didn't show love and affection, right? It's a very neutral type of experience in terms of it's just raw data. But raw data doesn't create your reality. It's just an input. Your interpretation of that data is what creates your reality. And most people grow up not even knowing that they have a choice in terms of what that data means to them, how they can interpret that into an empowering type of interpretation, something that is helpful, that is beneficial for them. Because when you ultimately hold these types of things internally and you let it affect you, and you believe that your dad or this or that was doing things to you maliciously, then that just carries on for the rest of your life. And it's not affecting anybody else but yourself. However, now, when you can become aware of that and you can acknowledge it and you can just try to look at it from their perspective, what must have been going on in their life for them to be doing this, saying this, acting this way, right? Because you want to think behind the individual's actions, right? Again, we talked about this earlier in terms of the father likely inherited an operating system programming from his parents about how he should be. It's just learned, right? It wasn't nothing malicious. It's just what he experienced. So remember, you have direct control over the meaning and the interpretation that you attach to any particular event, circumstance, experience in your life. And you have the ability to choose an empowering interpretation and meaning to attach to that event. Because remember, ultimately, when you attach a negative experience, a negative meaning, negative interpretation, the only person that is ultimately affecting is you. Life is neutral, meaning is not. So ultimately, the law of interpretation says that experience, situations, events that happen in your life really have no inherent meaning other than the meaning that you are attaching to them. And so you assign the meaning, and the meaning that you assign determines your emotion, the behavior, and then ultimately the outcome. When you change the meaning, you change the entire chain. And then law number 3, the law of emotion. Okay? Law of emotion. Now, emotions are really just instructions. They're in pieces of information, okay? They are letting you know that something is up, right? And so with the law of emotion, here's the thing. Most people misunderstand what emotions actually are. Emotions are not feelings, they're instructions. They are programming language. Think about like Python or C++ or the HTML. They're just programming language, and that's how you want to think about it in terms of from all of those different programming languages on the software side. It's really just that. And with the emotions, they shape what you focus on, what decisions you make, what actions you take, what you attract, and what you avoid. Your emotional state isn't a response to reality. It's a command to reality. Let me give you a scenario of exactly how this works. There's this woman who's trying to build an online business, and for this example, we'll call her Jenny. She's talented, she has a good product, and she's been working on it for months. And one morning, she wakes up and she checks her analytics, and she sees 0 sales in her dashboard. Now, if her emotional OS is running scarcity and anxiety, and she hasn't consciously chosen her state, here's what happens. Her anxiety focuses her attention on what's not working. She starts looking at YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and starts seeing other competitors that are similar to her that are crushing it. And the scarcity makes her desperate. So she starts discounting her product, posting frantically, and really just changing her strategy overall every 2 days because she doesn't know whether something is working or not, or that maybe it's her pricing, maybe it's the product color, maybe it's, something small. All of these different things are going through her mind because she believes that something is wrong with her product, with her strategy, with her marketing, whatever that may be. And so then she starts making decisions from a state of panic. And those panic decisions start generating panicked results, which confirms the scarcity, which deepens the anxiety and deepens the loop. Now let's rewind and let's look at that same woman who gets up in the morning, does morning breath routines in terms of like, she's working on her breath. She is inhaling a few times. Right? She's inhaling, holding for a few seconds. She's breathing out. She's getting grounded. She's maybe writing in her journal. She's maybe waking up with gratitude. And she's intentionally programmed her mental state and her emotional state before she looks at the numbers. And she understands that this is going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. And she's okay with it because she understands that she has a vision in terms of what she wants to accomplish, and that it's not going to happen overnight, right? It's not going to be something that's going to be quick, that's going to be fast, because quick and fast means that it's typically going to be not long lasting. So she understands the longevity play here. So she's operating from calm clarity. From that state, she's looking at the data, right? The numbers, the dashboard from a different perspective, a different lens. And she's asking herself, what is the data telling me? Is it a traffic problem or a conversion problem? And running a marketing agency myself, in terms of driving sales in marketing and advertising, it's often the case that it's a traffic problem, right? Because you can have a beautiful, amazing looking store that has nice pictures, a nice call to action, great user experience, great user interface, but there's no traffic, then it's not going to convert, right? Because there's not going to be anybody there to actually purchase, right? So she's really looking at this objectively, and she thinks to herself in terms of, what can I do here? And then she looks at making a strategic adjustment. She reaches out to 3 potential influencers, collaborators, from a place of confidence, not desperation. And so with that, she's not moving with anxiety. She's not moving with scarcity. So now her actions are going to be more intentional, more deliberate. And then her results are going to be completely different in the next 30 days because she's not worried about the day-to-day numbers, because she understands that this is a long-term play and it doesn't happen overnight. So it's the same situation, same skill level, the same exact product, but a completely different trajectory. The only difference was the emotional state that she was operating from when she engaged with the problem. Your emotions dictate what you see and what you ignore. They determine whether you make decisions from fear or from wisdom. They're not side effects of your life. They are the operating instructions that are operating your life. So remember that your emotional state is not a reaction, it's a command. The law of emotion ultimately says that the state that you're in when you engage with reality determines the reality that you create. If you don't choose your state deliberately, your environment will choose it for you, and it won't choose wisely. So let's go to law number 4, the law of pattern repetition. Okay? So pattern repetition. This is huge here because this is in terms of you repeating a bunch of patterns and then going through a cycle of things always happening a certain way, having a certain experience, because it's always repeating and you're always getting the same result, the same outcome. So let me show you how this works. So you have thought, emotion, action, then you get an outcome, and then it's all reinforced, okay? So you're starting with your thought, that's creating an emotion, that then is creating an action, and then you're creating an outcome, and then all of this gets reinforced. So this is the pattern that you need to be aware of and realize that this is happening on demand and it's happening automatically, right? But you want to be able to come into this pattern and break it in terms of all the negativity, the things that are not useful for you, right? To replace them with positive thoughts, positive emotions, empowering ones, right? That allow you to take positive action and get a positive outcome, right? An outcome that you actually want. So this is the law that really explains why you keep experiencing the same things, why you keep getting the same outcomes, even though when you believe that you think that you have changed, but you're still getting the same particular outcomes. So let me give you an example of this. So let's say there's an individual, John, and he is just getting out of a toxic relationship. He's done, he's spent, he's no longer wanting to be in a relationship. He tells himself, never again, I'm just gonna die alone, I'm gonna be single for the rest of my life. And he spends his time working on himself, or at least he thinks he does. He reads a few books, he goes to the gym, and he ultimately feels better. And then after just a few months, he's back in another relationship that looks different on the surface, different person, different name, different city, but it feels exactly the same as before in terms of underneath it all. It's the same dynamic, the same arguments, the same things are happening that happened in his previous relationship. The same feeling of walking on eggshells, like he can't express himself. She's getting upset, he's getting upset. They're arguing, they talk about wanting to break up, but they never do. And it's just this toxicity that continues, right, that happened the same in his previous relationship. And then he asks himself, well, why does this keep happening to me? Here's why. He changed the external inputs, the person, the environment, the surface behaviors, but he never changed the internal patterns. This is the biggest thing here, right? It's a consistent pattern that he just is not aware of that is happening, that is giving him the same exact outcome. And so this loop here is what he is going through on a consistent basis, no matter what happens, right? He goes through a breakup and he takes 3 to 4 months off and he finds another partner. All of this is continually happening. It doesn't matter if it's a different person, different partner, different gal, different location, different city, different name. All of it is going to continue to run and happen, and he's going to continue to get the same outcome because he has the thought of, I need somebody to make me feel whole. That's his initial thought. And then the emotion is he has anxiety, he has attachment issues in terms of needing somebody to be in his life or else he doesn't feel like he is whole. And then he goes into people pleasing, trying to do everything that she says and never saying no, giving her and getting her whatever she wants. And then she then realizes that he doesn't have a really strong backbone and that she can continue to just get whatever she wants and put him down and do all this stuff. And so it creates this loop. And then also here in the action, he's over investing early. He's showing too much love and affection way too early before he's even vetted the other person, right? Because you have that initial attraction, that initial kind of honeymoon phase where you're both kind of getting to know each other. But if you overly invest, if you're trying to put the other person on a pedestal, then you're putting yourself down, right? And you are thinking that you're not at their level, right? So then that gives him the power over you. And so he's getting that same exact outcome, and it's reinforced time and time again, no matter who it is, because it's all him that is going and doing and thinking and experiencing, okay, all of this, because it's a pattern that he hasn't stopped to think about and be like, man, what is really going on here? Like, am I the problem? And of course, you're always a problem, right? It's one of those things where you really need to think about like situations that constantly don't work out for you, okay? That don't work out to your benefit or the way that you were hoping or had hoped. You always need to look in the mirror and think to yourself, what is going on? What am I doing? What do I need to improve upon? And more often than not, that's going to be the case. And here's the thing, because this law here, in terms of the law of pattern repetition, it doesn't just happen through and to relationships. It happens with money, and it applies to every other part of your life as well. Because this is just a pattern, right? This is just a loop that's happening and going through, and that you're going through because you're unaware of all of these different inputs, right? Your thoughts in terms of, let's say for money, you don't believe that money is abundant. You believe that money is limited. You believe that there isn't enough to go around and that you're not the kind of person that is able to make a lot of money. So then you react emotionally when money is not in your bank account, or with opportunities that may come your way, but you discount them, okay? And then action wise, when opportunities do come your way and you see them as potential opportunities to make more money, well, your emotions and your thoughts don't allow you to take that action because you already have a preconceived notion and interpretation that there isn't enough money. Money is limited. You're not the kind of person that makes a whole lot of money, even though you really, really want to make more money, right? So it's this constant loop that continues, right? But it's really just a pattern, okay? And when you change these inputs in terms of your thoughts, that money is abundant, there are no limitations to money, and then you feel good when you see your bank account, even though you may not have $1 million in there, but you're okay and understand that there's a process to making money. And when you're level-headed with your emotions, then you're able to take action on opportunities that come your way because you're not being dragged down by your thoughts of limitations and your emotions regarding money. So it's all interrelated and connected to and applied to all areas of your life. And the key thing here is just becoming aware of all of these different inputs here, right? And being able to change them out with empowering types of inputs in terms of thoughts, emotions, behaviors, right? Which then give you a certain outcome that is what you exactly are looking for and want, right? A predictable outcome that you want to have versus having all of these just naturally run through without your awareness, because you're more often than not going to get what you want, right? You're not going to get your desired reality or outcome. So the law of pattern says that every recurring experience in your life is a signal. It's showing you the pattern that's running underneath. And so when you stop fighting the pattern and you read it, you acknowledge it, and you decode it, you're then able to change that code. Law number 5, the law of reflection. So the law of reflection is the final one here. And here's the thing. The law of reflection equals ultimately a mirror, okay? And so this is really just all a mirror and not a generator. It doesn't generate anything for you. It's just a reflection through a mirror in terms of who you are, who you believe to be, right? And we'll go deep into this, but it's really just a reflection of your existing reality. And it's just holding up a mirror and showing you, okay, you know what? This is who you are, right? Whether you like it or not. And the law of reflection is what ties all the other laws together. This law says that reality isn't generating your experience. It's simply reflecting it. Your external world is a mirror. It shows you what's happening inside your internal world, your beliefs, your emotional patterns, your identity, your expectations. All of it gets reflected back to you through your circumstances, relationships, opportunities, obstacles. Let me show you how this works with something that almost anyone and everyone can relate to. So you have a man, his name is Steve, and Steve believes that he has to work hard for every dollar that he makes. He believes that money is scarce, money is limited, and that wealthy people are either cheaters, liars, or that they did something shady to make their money. Now, that's his internal state, a scarcity-coded belief system about money. Now, here's what gets reflected back to him every single time. He gets a job that pays him extremely well, but the job requires him to work 60 to 70 hours a week, right? It's reinforcing what he believes. He has money coming in, but it's only coming in through him having to put in those 60 to 70 hours a week, right? Through grinding. And that reflects his belief that money comes in only when you work hard. And then suddenly he gets a raise. And then in the same month, his car breaks down and his rent goes up. And so the money disappears as fast as it arrives, right? So he's making all this money, but all this money that's coming in is going right back out. And again, it's reinforcing his belief that money doesn't stay, right? It just comes right in and it goes right out because he doesn't believe that he deserves having a whole lot of money. He believes money is supposed to be something that you make and you get by working your butt off, and that he doesn't deserve to have a whole lot of money because only the wealthy have a whole lot of money. And those types of people do something shady, they're liars, they're cheaters, and he's not any of those. And so he's boxed himself in to this limited way of thinking, to this container that is self-limiting, that he cannot get out of because he doesn't have the awareness to step out of that, because his belief system has him trapped within that container. And then one of his friends invites him to a business opportunity and to invest and to make a pretty decent return. But then he says no because it sounds too good to be true. And so then any opportunity that comes his way to make more money, he automatically says no because he already has the idea, the belief that money is not for him in terms of having a whole lot of money, right? Rich people have a whole lot of money and they are shady, they are liars, they're cheaters. So automatically he is denying himself the opportunity and the potential to make a whole lot of money. And so keep in mind that reality isn't punishing him. It's simply reflecting back to him his internal world, his beliefs. It's showing him his own internal operating system through the external world. Every circumstance, every situation is a readout. Now let's contrast that with somebody whose internal state about money is completely different, and their internal state is value creates money. Value creates wealth. And I'm someone who creates value and attracts money easily and efficiently and naturally. Now think about what that person's reality reflects, right? It reflects opportunities to reinforce that. They get a lot of opportunities that come their way with referrals, with business opportunities, business networking opportunities, opportunities to invest in different projects, in different deals, right? Different business partners come his way. So all of this is reinforced and reflected back to him because he has a positive outlook on wealth, on money, right? So it's all just being reflected back. And so you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are, because it gets reflected back to you through reality. And so the law of reflection says, if you don't like what you see in your external reality, don't fight the mirror. Don't sit there and yell at the mirror and cuss it out and get all upset, because the mirror isn't judgmental. It's not going to take somebody's side. It's not going to think because, hey, you're this kind of person, I'm going to show you this reflection, or because you're that kind of person, I'm going to show you a different reflection. No, it's going to show you exactly what you believe internally in terms of your beliefs, your identity, right? It's going to show you that precisely through the mirror. And that's the awareness for you to see that reflection and make the proper adjustments so you can actually see what you want to see in the reflection. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to walk through the decode process. So let me go ahead and erase the board here, and we'll walk through exactly how you can use this, right? This awareness and this understanding to decode reality and use these laws to your benefit. Okay, so this is the decode process. Okay, so these are 5 steps, and we're going to walk through these individually. So number 1, you want to observe the pattern. Okay, number 2, identify the law. Which law does it pertain to in terms of the pattern? And then number 3, reinterpret. Okay, because remember, you have the choice, the ability to reinterpret and to create a perception that you want and interpret whatever you want something to mean and to be to you. So number 4, recode identity. And then number 5, realign behavior. So these are the 5 steps. And because you know the laws now, you understand how they work, you understand the rules, but understanding the rules isn't enough. You need a process for applying them in real life when things happen to you. And so let me walk you through a scenario using all 5 of these different steps so that you can see how to use them in real time and use them to your benefit. And so you can see how they work together. So let's say that you've been stuck at your career for 2 years. You've been at the same exact place, the same exact job, the same exact pay, and you've tried applying for different jobs, but you've been denied. You've updated the resume, you've changed the keywords of the resume, and try to make sure you put in the right types of descriptions and making sure that you have a really nice, well thought out resume. However, you're being denied. And so you're feeling not very valued because you're in this position, you're making decent money, but you can't seem to get another better, higher paying job. So what do? So step 1, right? We're going to observe the pattern. So what do we do here in this situation in terms of observing the pattern? Well, first we want to zoom out, because you don't want to ask yourself, why isn't anybody hiring me? What you really want to be asking is, what pattern is happening here, is going on here, right? Like, what is the pattern here? And when you step back and you reflect and you look at everything objectively, you realize that this isn't new. In your last job, you also hit a ceiling. And before that, when you were in school, you also played it very safe. You never raised your hand, you never were outspoken, you never put yourself forward. And so the pattern isn't that the job market is tough. The pattern is that you consistently stop yourself once you get to a certain level. That's the data, that's the input. And so once you now realize it and you become aware of it, you can work with it. And then we look at step number 2. You want to identify the law. What is the law that this is applying to, right? That this applies to. And you think about it and you realize that this is the law of identity. Your identity has a ceiling. Somewhere inside, you believe that people like me don't get to that level. Maybe it came from your family. Maybe it came from protecting yourself and not wanting to put yourself out there and maybe get embarrassed or risk looking dumb or risk looking foolish, right? So all of these different things that could have played a factor in terms of why you feel this way about yourself in terms of your identity. But that's okay, because you are aware now that this is an identity play, and your identity is just running a program that's been saying, you know what, this is as far as you go. And then reality has been reflecting that. But becoming aware of it is what hands you back the power. So now we move to step number 3. This is where we're going to reinterpret that. Okay? We want to now give this a different meaning. We reinterpret this and say, this 2-year stagnation, it's not punishment. It's not proof that you're not good enough. It's the law of reflection, showing you the identity ceiling in real time. And once you interpret it as information instead of a verdict, it loses its emotional charge and you can actually work with it. And then step 4, this is the real work. You want to recode the identity, right? This is the most powerful step here, because you begin asking yourself, who would I need to be in order for career growth to be normal for me? Not exceptional, normal. That version of you that doesn't hesitate to apply for a position that is maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone, that you maybe have some questions about and not fully think that you can get it, but maybe you're qualified for it. And maybe it's just a belief pattern that needs to change, right? In terms of who you believe you are, in terms of your identity, right? So that version of you that speaks up in meetings, that version of you that doesn't wait to be chosen, but puts themselves forward. Start operating from that identity, not someday, today, and make decisions from that identity. So think about it. Ask yourself, that future version of me, right? That best version of me who is all of these different things, right? Who is charismatic, who understands that career growth is normal and that likely has that position that I already want, that is making X amount of more money. How would they be thinking about this? How would they be doing this, right? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? How would they approach this, right? And start thinking from that perspective in the now. And then finally, number 5, you need to realign the behavior. This is where your behavior needs to match your new identity, because behavior is evidence. Every time that you act from your new identity, apply for a role that may be a little bit out of your comfort zone, negotiate your salary, speak up in a room where you used to stay quiet, you're literally writing new code. You're creating new evidence for the new operating system. And that evidence reinforces your new identity, which then changes your reality. So ultimately, you want to observe, identify, reinterpret, recode, and realign. That's the decode process. And you can run it on anything: money, relationships, career, health, purpose, whatever that may be. The 5 laws are the knowledge, and these 5 steps are the application. So here's the thing. You're not in reality. You're interfacing with your own operating system. Once you understand the laws, you stop feeling lost and you start feeling powerful. You don't need to control reality. You need to understand it. Decode the system and life becomes a blueprint instead of a battlefield.